Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on how to develop your company's employee value proposition. My name is Charles Rogel, and I'm the Vice President of Products and Marketing for DecisionWise, and I'll be the moderator for today's presentation. Our presenter today is Dr. David Mason. Hi, everybody. David is a consultant and master trainer at DecisionWise. He holds a doctorate degree in cognitive psychology from Columbia University, and prior to joining DecisionWise, he taught at the Department of Cognitive, Perceptual, and Brain Sciences at the University College of London. He works with organizations around the world to define and leverage their employee value propositions. Today, just to give you a brief overview of DecisionWise, we've been in business now since 1996. We specialize in conducting employee surveys and providing organization development consulting. And over the past 3 years, we've experienced tremendous growth, and recently we were named to the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing private companies in the U.S., which we're really proud of. Our basis, though, is usually starts, in fact, all of our work usually originates from using survey data to drive organization change. And so we'll talk about how to use some of that information today in terms of creating your employee value proposition. Before we begin, there's a few items I want to cover. Number one, this webinar will last for 60 minutes. Everyone will be on mute, so if you have questions, please use the question toolbar, and we'll try to respond to those as we go throughout. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end. The session has been approved for 1 credit hour by both the HRCI organization and SHRM for recertification credit. And after the webinar, I'll send out an email with a link to the slides as well as the activity codes for HRCI and SHRM. So to begin, let's take a look at the current state of the workforce. And what we've done is we've put together a series of slides here that show some of the macro activity going on with workers in the U.S. workforce today. So the one that's interesting is this one from the U.S. Department of Labor, which shows the number of hires, job openings, and quits. What we're looking at is obviously the trend from the recession, which is that gray bar right there. You can see that there is a dip, obviously, during the recession. And then from about 2010, things have gradually improved. The interesting thing on this slide is you'll notice that job openings have now overtaken the number of hires that are occurring in the workforce. So that means that there are more job openings than are currently being fulfilled. There's higher demand right now for workers than ever before, well, over the past 10 years. You can also see that quit rates are increasing. So quit rates are really the voluntary separations that are happening. People are leaving their jobs to find better opportunities, basically. And that will continue to rise as those number of job openings continue to increase. And this was based on data from May of this year where that changeover happened. The other thing you'll notice is that overall, trends for tenure were rising. So this is understandable as we were coming out of a recession. People were staying longer at their place of employment because there were less opportunities available. But now you can see in 2014 that number has kind of leveled off and dipped a little bit. Now we're looking at all groups here, and what we'll probably see is that trend for tenure will either stay the same or go down a little bit overall. What's interesting, though, is that as you look at the tenure by generation or workforce generation, the younger workers here at the bottom of the slide are this blue line. And you can see that for the younger population, ages 25 to 34, they've generally been the most mobile since the 1950s, as far back as this data goes. They're still at about 3.1 years as their average rate of tenure at an organization. But then, of course, as you grow older and mature, you tend to stay longer at the companies that you're with. So the insight here is that basically younger workers will be more mobile in the workforce and be harder to kind of hold on to overall. Now, what's happened, though, is that there's kind of been a compounding effect because what's going on in the labor force is that the millennial generation, this youngest generation of workers, are now the largest segment of the workforce population, according to this slide from the Pew Research Center. So this mobile population, this more mobile worker who's willing to kind of jump around to jobs earlier in their workforce or earlier in their careers, is now the largest group in the population. And so you'll see more mobility overall in the workforce because the economy is increasing, you have more millennials, and there's basically more opportunities for people to move around.
Right, and so the key here at this point is how do we leverage that? How do we find the ones that are willing to move and attract them to our company?
Right.
And how do we make sure that they don't leave our company? And part of that has to do with we're living in this knowledge generation where it's much easier to find information about companies and align their values with what they want. Corporations don't have that monopoly anymore on geographic location or knowledge or anything. And so the question here is, what do we want to communicate to these workers so that they will either be attracted or stay?
Exactly. So you can see it's much more competitive. It's only going to get worse or better, you might say.
Depends on how good your company is.
Exactly. And so there's a challenge ahead in terms of what to do to really attract, retain, and engage your workforce. So that brings us to the topic of today's presentation, which is this employee value proposition. David, do you want to talk about this definition here and what it means?
So the employee value proposition is this idea that an employee receives value in some sense. We're economic, rational beings at our core, and if we are weighing the costs and the benefits of where we work, and a lot of that comes down to paycheck, but it's some of the other things such as location, commute, respect, things like that. It's all these things that go into it. Yeah. And so ultimately, we're trying to incorporate that into one bubble. What is an employee receiving value-wise from your corporation?
And so what we'll be addressing here, or what really the employee value proposition addresses, are these four questions. You want to talk about what these kind of mean, David?
Yeah, so there's three. The first three questions are sort of the skeleton of an EVP, the employee value proposition. Attraction, motivation, and retention. So what does it take to attract the right people, your recruitment efforts and things like that? Why are they applying to this job and not another one? What does it take to motivate your people? That means once they're there, what keeps them there? What makes them work hard? And that ties in a lot to retention and why are they staying there versus putting their LinkedIn profile, updating that, and sending out resumes and cruising Monster and so on. Right. And then lastly, what is your company's brand? So a lot of these things, attraction, motivation, retention, we can come up with a huge taxonomy of what those things are doing, and we're able to come up with a list, but that list is boring. So what is it? What is your brand? What is the visceral, the emotional connection that you're conveying to people that is attracting, motivating, and retaining?
Yeah, it all kind of ties into what your brand is. And it's not necessarily the logo or what you mean to customers. It's really what you mean to your employees. Your
exactly.
Your brand to the employee facing.
It goes beyond the mission statement too.
So we want to get a little bit of information to understand the audience that we have here today. So we're launching a poll. And basically, we want to understand if your organization currently has an employee value proposition. So I've launched a poll right now. Please take a moment to respond. And we have basically three simple answers. One, yes, no, we don't have one. Yes, but we haven't really formally rolled it out, or maybe we kind of know what it is. And then number three, yes, we have one. We're leveraging it to attract, retain, and engage our workforce. So take a moment to respond, and then we'll show the results and hopefully provide some insight to you as well in terms of where you stand to the rest of the people on the presentation today. So it looks like we got most of the people voted, or yeah, most people have responded. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. Oops, sorry. Let's see. I'm having a little trouble with my presentation here. Okay, so let me close the poll and then share the results with you. So the majority of the people on the session today, 55% no, they don't have one, 30% yes, but it's not formally rolled out, and then 16% leverage it, use it, are doing pretty good with their employee brand.
Fantastic.
That's great. And that's interesting. We didn't expect, well, let's see, I didn't know what to expect. This is our first presentation on the topic here, so.
That was about what I expected. I expected a little bit higher in the know and stuff like that. It's a little bit different though, these results, than our research on the topic.
Okay.
So if you want to bring up what we typically...
Yeah, so let's show you let's see, I'm going to close the poll and go back to the slide presentation. We'll show you our validated study on this particular question amongst everyone in the United States. Hold on, let's see. Okay, so here it is.
Does your organization have an EVP? 100% yes. 0% no. And so this is an important finding and probably one of the main take-home messages that we want to give to you. We're so confident in this that this is everyone in the known universe. That's how good of a study this was. Everyone has an employee value proposition, whether they choose to call it that or not, whether they know about it. Everyone's got one because, like we described, this is what employees are valuing about your organization. You may not have codified it, you may not have explicated it, you may not have words, although 16% of you did, so fantastic, good job for you guys. But the other, 84% of you that say, no, I don't have one, or yes, but it's not formally rolled out. It's more that yes, but it's not formally rolled out. Everyone's got one. So all the people that said no, think about it in your minds right now. What do you value about your organization? And chances are, if you talk to other people where you're at, you'll find that there's very similar things that you all value and very similar things that you actually don't like about the organization. And it goes beyond things as healthcare benefits, although that's part of it. But it goes into a lot more than just that. But everyone's got one, and we can't stress that enough.
Yeah, so I guess we're being somewhat facetious in the previous poll, in that really is it formally kind of recognized in the organization. But if you ask every employee in your organization, they will understand what the EVP is, even if they don't even understand what the acronym means or anything. They can tell you what they value about the organization, and it's probably going to be different for a lot of them, right? There's not one EVP, so to speak, for every employee.
No, if there were, that'd be really easy.
Yeah.
We probably wouldn't have to do the webinar.
And
it's not an easy thing.
And that's what we'll talk about more today, is how you kind of you separate that information from the group. So let's talk about what employee value proposition is not. First, it's not a demographic profile.
That's fantastic, and demographics definitely feed into the EVP. It's a very easy way to say, oh, well, you know what, all the waiters and waitresses have this value in a company, and all the kitchen staff have another value in the company, and all the executives have another. And that's typical with an EVP, is that you're going to find different values for different groups of people. And it might be segregated by their position in the company. You might find it by generation. You might find it by race or sex or ethnicity or anything like that, and you're going to find all those things. But just by segmenting people out into demographic profiles, you still don't have an employee value proposition.
Yeah, I know a lot of people look at millennials. That's a big topic nowadays, and they say millennials want this, and this is how they view our company, and so they might have that kind of outlined, but it's not just that.
Like we said, it's not just formal benefits, your 401k, your health benefits, your company car, or if you have a foosball table, or if you play Quidditch at breaks. It's not; these are not just the things that go into it. Again, it's part of it, to be sure, but if we're only concentrating on formal benefits, we're missing a large portion of what the value proposition still is. The culture. A lot of people think that, oh, we're just doing a culture analysis. And again, part of it, but not the whole thing. If you have a good company culture, that might be something that attracts. I know, for example, Google has this fantastic, innovative, creative kind of culture, and that attracts people and helps keep them and motivate them and whatnot. But that's not the entire value as well. Employee engagement. This is a huge part of, when you go back to the big three, attraction, motivation, and retention, this is a huge part of the motivation. But it's one piece of it. It's a huge piece, it's a big piece, but it's not the whole piece. And I say that with trepidation, because employee engagement happens to be one of our company's big cornerstone flagship products. And so I don't want to undersell it. Employee engagement is still fantastic, but it's not the end-all be-all when it comes to the EVP. In fact, it's only one part of one part.
Now, as a big fan of the Ghost Hunters show on cable television, I always thought EVP meant electronic voice phenomenon, which is ghost voices, basically. So it's not that, right? You're saying? I'm incorrect in my assumption?
I guess if you had that, that might be one of your brands, as you don't have EVP at your corporation.
Right. All right. So let's talk about the types of benefits. And we've kind of created a 4-square model, because you have to do that as you're talking about any particular topic. And we've broken them out into these formal and informal benefits, tangible and intangible.
Okay. So when we're talking about formal benefits, that's the ones we talk about, 401k, things like that. That's easy to point to, and that's very contractual. We kind of write that in and we say, if you work, we will pay you this much money and we will give you this much. That's part of it. People that get paid more, that's a fantastic part of your brand. We work with one company who has a lot of market share because they pay significantly above other similar type of organizations.
And that's their strategy to really retain the people that they have and motivate.
Exactly. And does it motivate them? Not necessarily, and we can talk about that. But that is one of the formal, tangible type of benefits. Informal, tangible type benefits are when I reference Quidditch, for example. It's things a lot like the informal, tangible are the ones where you can
Culture or something like that.
well, like location.
Oh, okay.
Like, you don't write in, oh, I will promise you this type of commute. But the fact that I only live a couple minutes from this office is a huge benefit for me. I love it. And it's one of the things that keeps us from moving to some other places. I love this commute. That's an informal, we can't promise you that, but it's a very tangible type benefit.
Sure.
And there's many things like that.
Let me flip through here and we'll talk about each of these specifically then and some of the samples.
Sure.
So formal, tangible, we've got down here base pay, health care, 401k, work schedule, company car maybe. Yeah. Any other, so these are really the things that you can quantify in a way and are kind of written into the contract of employment.
Yes, and that's definitely a part of your EVP.
And some of these, I guess, could be perks in a way, if they're more, well, I guess they're not written in. Maybe bonuses, vacations, things like that, okay?
So formal, intangible. When we ask the question, what's in the employer-employee contract, and we do this often with employee engagement, we say, what's in the contract? People often say, growth opportunities and respect. You owe me respect and stuff like that, and safety. And safety is a little bit more of it's definitely a formal one. We kind of promise you safety when you come to work for us, but it's not a tangible benefit. I can't say I'm an 86% on safety right now, but it's something that's in there, and it's part of the implicit contract. And so it's an important part of it. And when we ask people about the contract, a lot of this stuff comes up because it's so ingrained.
Yeah, so we look at this like, you want to be free from sexual harassment. You want to be protected if there's a lawsuit or something. You're not liable for certain things. You want to feel inclusion, be respected, those types of things.
And that's a formal thing that companies will say, this is what we do.
The formal expectation you have. So informal, tangible.
And this is where culture comes in. Like it says here, ambience of the office. This is an informal benefit. We can't promise you a fantastic culture. But it's something you can feel. Is like when I walk in, is this a fun place, a creative place? It's an informal one. It's not in the contract, but you can definitely see it. Your work schedule, there's an aspect of that where the hours you're working, obviously, but maybe your schedule is really flexible and you're able to say, hey, I'm going to take off a little bit early for my kid's soccer game or whatnot. The advancement opportunities and the growth within there, and as seen by career building.
Yeah, so you're not really promised any of these, but they're kind of implied, and you're looking for these types of benefits to boost your career.
Yeah, exactly. And again, when we're talking about EVP, this is one that we tend to do okay at, is saying, hey, you know what, like, how about this?
So then finally, this informal, intangible box.
Right. And this one's a hard one to do because it's essentially the softest of soft skills. It's the complexity of the human mind and emotional connection and things like that.
Yeah.
And so if you look in here, that identification with a brand, that's such a nebulous concept. What is a brand? How do you connect to it? Then the next couple, the sharp-eyed among you will recognize those as part of our magic model for employee engagement, meaning, autonomy, growth, impact we've got under a different one, and then connection. Leadership style. Do you work better under authoritarian, authoritative, laissez-faire, things like that? Job security. There's only so much you can promise on that, but you can kind of feel how your job is.
So it seems like some of these, for example, like on our surveys, we hear a lot from employees that they love the family atmosphere. They feel like they're working with family, and they want to be closer to people in the organization. All that is part of this formal, intangible piece, correct?
Yes, exactly.
So let's talk about understanding benefits sought. How do you gather this information? What's the best way to understand, all these different types? It seems like there could be over 50 or 100 different things that you could talk about here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the first things, and this is sort of everyone's very first inclination, is say, hey, let's just survey everyone. Let's find out what people value. And that's a great idea. That's a great intuition, and it's important, and we'll get there. But the problem is, if you do a survey, what you're essentially doing is, as the survey administrator, you're guessing. You're saying, oh, okay, I will just say, hey, do you value this? Yes or no? Do you value this? Yes or no? And what if you're missing certain elements of it?
Let me pause. There's been some audio trouble. Are we sounding better now? Is it clear? Is it coming through? Just send us some feedback if you're still experiencing any problems. Go ahead, David.
Okay, so I'll keep talking. Do you need me to stall or do you want me to actually keep going?
No, you're good.
Okay. So the idea with the survey then is you're missing a lot of the nuance that comes from people in that you're sort of telling them, this is what we think the brand is. Do you agree? Yes or no? And that's a great idea. However, that's going to be a problem if you guess wrong. And more often than not, people do because we don't know what people want as well as we think we do. Where as humans, we're notoriously bad at estimating things like this.
So on the other side of the spectrum, we have one-on-one interviews.
Okay, so the natural inclination, okay, if we can't get the nuance from the survey, let's talk to people directly. Let's just get right down into the trenches. Let's say, what do you care about with this? And that's a great idea. There's a couple problems with that one as well. You can see that it's on the other end of the spectrum. One's a very macro, one's a very micro. So with that, you run into a couple problems. One is just the sheer nature of how difficult that is to accomplish. How long is it going to take you to conduct all these interviews? It's going to take a while. And also, if you're just asking people, they might go on a tangent that they don't know. If you're just sitting there letting them talk, people aren't very good, again, at knowing why they do things. And so if you just sit there and ask them all these questions, you might be a fantastic interviewer, but if you're not prompting the right things, then they might be feeding you information that's not very helpful.
Yeah. So then in the middle, we have focus groups.
Okay. This is, in our opinion, best practice for how to start. It combines the macroness of the survey, but with the individual nature of the interviews. What you're doing is you're getting people to open up, essentially give qualitative answers, and then what you're doing is you have sort of a checks and balances, is as someone says something, it will prompt another person in the group to say, hey, you know what, I like that, but I'm a little bit different. And so what you're able to do is you're able to use that sociality to start honing in on things, and people, it forces them to defend their own thoughts in a way that helps get to the more accurate version of what they're actually thinking. We say that if you're doing an EVP, you should always start with focus groups because that will give you the best information for which you can then move on to the survey, where you can take everything from there and expand it to a much bigger.
So let's talk about what you're really asking in these focus groups and what kind of information you're trying to gather. We've posted here some sample questions. What kind of responses do these typically elicit?
Oh, so when we do these focus groups, it's fantastic. It's fun. It's high level or high energy because you're asking questions like, why did you come seek employment with us in the first place? Mm-hmm. People love to tell stories, especially about themselves, and they'll say things like, honestly, it was close by and I saw a help wanted sign. Yeah. And then you say, okay, well, just that, because there's lots of help wanted signs. Why did you choose this one? And they say, well, I kind of like this corporation. I've seen it a bunch. It's got a cool building. I've got some friends that work there. And then people are like, yeah, definitely. And they pile on. And it's really fun. It's one of my favorite things to do here at the company, actually, is run these types of focus groups where people are just being nostalgic and remembering why they joined. And then we move from why did you join to why do you stay? What do you like about this? So on and so forth. What are things that we try as initiatives that don't really resonate with you? They're like, oh yeah, the employee wellness program. They sure try it, but I don't like it because X, Y, or Z.
So you can really tailor this and find out a lot about what you're already doing and then what might be missing.
Exactly. And you have to be pretty good at running focus groups. You have to be fairly comfortable with the ambiguity and being able to play around and take people down a path and prompt them and dive deeper on things. This isn't something that just anyone can jump in and be like, oh, now I'm a focus group conductor. Right. So you want some experience.
So once you have your information from the focus group, you can then start building a survey, which helps you kind of gather that macro information from the rest of the organization. Exactly. Let me flip over here and show a sample survey to you so you get an idea of what we're talking about. Sorry. So I'm showing a sample employee value proposition survey, and there's a lot of questions on this. It's somewhat, I don't know what I want to say long, but it seems like there's a lot of information you gathered. There's a lot of those benefits that the company already offers, those formal, tangible type benefits, as well as some of the some potential benefits in the future which they might not be offering. But the idea is to allow people to rank order a lot of these topics. And so if you're looking at the top 5 attributes that initially attracted you to the company, there's a lot to choose from. And these are really those items that you discovered the focus groups. Is that right?
Exactly, yes.
And then from here, you're able to kind of choose and rank order the top 5 items, and you can kind of move them around. But from here, really, you're then able to get kind of a good set of, okay, what's the most popular reason or the most important reason people mentioned, and then you have a nice rank ordered list.
And something else is you're actually testing 2 things here, is because not only are you seeing the top ones, but you're also seeing the ones that don't make the cut, the ones that are chosen the least. Mm-hmm. And so you're actually getting a lot of information that can help you as you say, oh, you know what, this visible commitment to company values that we're seeing in the middle, no one chooses that. And maybe it's important, and maybe it's just a satisfaction element that they would notice if we got rid of it. But as of right now, that's not what people seem to care about. So if we're trying to create a brand, we need to not focus on that necessarily. We need to focus a little bit more on the idea of our market share.
Well, an interesting thing is, as you look at number 10, it's now ranked the top 5 attributes that you like most about it today. Mm-hmm. So you were attracted for these 5. Now, why do you stay, basically? What's really appealing to you now? And what we find is really interesting in that these top 5 sometimes are the same, but you'll find that there's some variation between individuals where they throw in different ones, and then all of a sudden, the number 1 attributes that they like now is different than what attracted them to the organization.
Oh, completely. And in fact, that's more common than not, actually. Like recruitment and retention tend to be 2 very different buckets. Yeah. Someone comes in for one thing, and how many times have you talked to someone and they're like, yeah, when I came in, I'm doing a very different job than what I got hired for. And it just sort of organically changed into something else. And now I like this and I don't like this. And I originally came here because of X, Y, Z, and now I don't even think about those things. Yeah. That's very common.
And so it makes you wonder, do you then say, okay, we do need to start then advertising some of these reasons why people are here as opposed to what attracted them? What if there's a discrepancy? What do you do then?
If there's a discrepancy, and that's part of the communication of the EVP, and that's a huge thing in and of itself, probably requires its own webinar, honestly. But the quick answer is you sort of create 2 different brands, a recruitment brand and a motivation retention brand. Okay. And so there's an external, the one that you're selling, that type of brand, and then an internal one of the employees once they're there. Once you're in here, your family. Well, if I'm buying Nike shoes, I don't care how much the employees think they're a family. Sure. I just want shoes to be comfortable. And so there's that external type of brand. Hey, I'm going to come here because it's a market leader and things like that. But internally, it's because, and maybe Nike's not the best example. Let me think of one that doesn't have things like that. Some company like, we'll use. I'm trying to think. I want to be careful about calling out certain companies and confidentiality things. So maybe I'll just stop right there. But the idea is there's one company I work with where they pride themselves very much on their family aspect of it. And that's not why people came. But once they're in there, they get embraced so quickly into the company where the CEO knows everyone by name and has lunch with them and things like that, and really makes the presence known that, hey, there's no hierarchy here outside of the technicalities, but everyone really loves each other and cares about each other. So that's something that would never recruit someone, but once they're in there, it's number 1 with a bullet.
Huh, interesting. Okay, let me flip back to the presentation. And let's talk now about segmenting to the employee population. So when you talk about employee value proposition, one of the things that come out of this or people talk about is the segmentation study.
Yes.
What does that typically mean?
So the segmentation study is a tool used to get to your EVP. The segmentation study is a way to figure out, okay, not everyone at the company is the same, but there's a lot of commonalities and similarities between groups of people. So let's find 4 or 5 groups of people that would sort of be this level of categorization. So you can do that by demographics, like we talked about, ethnicity, sex, tenure, age, generation, whatever, salary, things like that. That's an easy one to do, but not often the best. The ones that tend to be a little bit better beyond job position, and that's a good one as well, but you want to go for benefits sought, because some people are going to show that they're in the company for different reasons. I'm here because I appreciate that family atmosphere. I'm here because I appreciate being part of a market leader. I'm here because of, and that transcends a lot of the demographics or job positions. Now, if you're hiring specifically for a job position, make an EVP for that job position. Yeah. Our engineers here, our programmers here, this is what they mostly want, kind of thing, and see if you can't figure out what the buckets are. But if you're looking for a company brand, an overall company mission statement of value, then you're going to want to try and look for benefits sought. And again, that's not formal benefits, that's any sort of value the employee receives.
So let me switch gears here and show a sample segmentation study. We call this a sample report, sample employee value proposition report. So we're creating here, we came up with 4 different profiles, and we can kind of go through and describe a few of these. And we'll focus on, for the sake of this presentation, we'll look at profile 1 in more depth. But this segment's largely attracted with the work that they'll be doing. They have more tenure than other segments. They stay with the company because they love living in the area, and they have a passion for the industry. So that's the overall, you're distilling the overall profile here of that particular person. Now, is that, how large of a population does that cover typically when you're kind of making 4 groups? Does that cover a fourth of them, or can you kind of tell what percentage of the population is really fits in profile 1?
Yeah, so what we generally shoot for is we try and shoot for 4 or 5 groups. Any more than that becomes unwieldy. Any less than that, and you're losing the nuance. And so between 4 and 6 groups is a good goal to shoot for. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a fourth to or a fifth of the population, because what you're going to see here in these profiles is this typically will cover 80 to 90% of people, and then there's 10% of the people that just don't fit into any profile at all.
Right.
And
they're just the weirdos in the company, kind of.
Yeah, that's the profile, the weirdo profile.
Right.
And so profile 1 might be 45% of your company, and then profiles 2, 3, and 4 might be 15 to 20% each after that. And so they're not always even. We don't like to split it that way because people don't split that way.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we try and essentially create an ad hoc factor analysis to come up with where these groups are located. And that might be 80% in one group and 10% in group 2, and that's it. It depends on how homogeneous your population is, really.
Yeah. So now I'm showing a breakout by what attracted them and what committed them to stay. So this is interesting. In profile number 1, excuse me, the work that they would be doing was most attractive, the opportunities they'd have, the company brand, but then the reasons why they like working there now or committed to the organization is based on recognition, the rewards and opportunities that they have in the organization.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of interesting things. This is a great executive presentation right here because you're able to start looking and say, oh, profiles 1, 2, and 4, the work I've been doing. The tasks are really interesting and stuff like that. Profile 3, if you remember from the earlier one, was a little bit more frontline employees, less advanced degrees, things like that. And so they're looking at the opportunities and the total rewards. Mm-hmm. They're looking at it very much more at that level versus the task. They just need a job kind of a thing. And so, okay, that shows us how we need to sell ourselves. But then how do we keep those people? Well, the rewards and actually the people are a big one for profile 3. In profile 1, recognition. That's important to realize. These people need that. And so we can say, when someone does a good job, our brand is, they will know it. We are open and honest about negative things if we need to fix it, but just as much positive things. In fact, if you look at, the Gottman ratio about marriage and stuff, it's like 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative interaction. Shows a stable. Well, these are the people that need that. You need to be more aware of those things. And then that's your employee value proposition. We're going to have this many positive, negative interactions. And then from there, you go create the brand, which is, we love you, we let you know it.
Now, it's somewhat difficult to identify these people, right? Just walking through the office. It's not like you start putting badges on people's shirts when they go by according to what profile they fit into. So how do you know how to focus your efforts to a particular group? Or do you kind of focus on doing all of these things to kind of cover everyone in the population?
So the key with an employee value proposition is you have to define the problem space first. You have to see where everyone's at. And then one of the benefits is you can now look at these profiles and you can say, okay, these are the people that fit into that profile. Well, hey, let's take a look at perhaps performance metrics, things like that, or attrition metrics. And we'll say, oh, you know what, profile 1, these are the things they need, but they seem to be getting it. But look at profile 4. The attrition in that group is much higher than all the others. So that seems like an urgent space where we should spend some time right now.
So you can be really targeted and focused in your efforts.
Exactly. And so it depends on your personal needs.
So we have some more detail on profile number 1. We talk about why they joined the company. This is kind of an overall description of kind of who they are, some of their unique differentiators, demographics, things like that. what attracted them, what committed them from the previous slide, why they work here. So you can give some more details. Sometimes you can include some of the comments from the surveys in here to kind of add a little bit more color to these particular profiles.
And one thing I'd like to point out on the right side, and this is an interesting one that we get to play with, is things like marital status, children, questions that HR typically can't ask,
right,
because of confidentiality things, you know what I mean, and you don't want to ever create any sort of protected class conflict or anything.
Yeah.
But as a third party, because we keep the data confidential and anonymous, we can look at this stuff and we can create aggregate views where you say, hey, you know what? Most of the people in here are single mothers. Most of the people here are single male college students. And it's things that we can then give you suggestions on how to improve and speak to those people without essentially outing anyone for being part of a particular class. And that's very helpful to be able to use that, because let's not pretend that those things don't affect your job and how much you enjoy your job.
Family life has a huge impact. So now we're looking at some of these initiatives here, and we've broken out the some of the factors into these different groups. So what's attracting the individual, what keeps them there, and what motivates them. So it looks like there's a little bit of overlap. So if you look at career growth opportunities or personal growth opportunities, those kind of span over all three areas in terms of the impact those things.
And that makes sense. That's a common finding.
Flexibility and location, more about attraction and retention.
Yes, but those are the things that, if you'll notice, don't motivate people. Like, I'm really happy it's a close location, but that's not what gets me out of bed in the morning. Is, oh, my commute is so short. Let's go work as hard as I can. It's not how it works. But it is very useful in attracting people and getting them in the door. And then recognition is the retention and the motivation. This is one of those things that really helps people go, oh, yeah, I'm making an impact, and my supervisor sees that. And that's a motivation thing. And so, again, you want to try and create that brand. But that's not going to move the needle when people are job surfing.
So here you've provided some recommendations on how to kind of improve in some of these areas. So flexible scheduling, offer career path options, personal growth, giving them opportunities to learn and grow. The location, it's hard to kind of move a location necessarily, but here at least helping them find housing relatively close, or have a service that helps them with that particular process.
Yeah, exactly. Or puts them close to public transportation, things like that. These are sort of high-level recommendations. This is, again, sort of an executive summary at this point, but we definitely go more into depth because it allows us to. And now you're seeing a little bit more of that depth right here.
So job factors, there's a few different things we're looking at. What do we mean by job factors here?
So job factors are the ones that are specifically related to the job itself. So when they say the work that I do, or the tasks or whatnot, what are the things in their job that are really speaking to them? So, for example, at the very bottom of the screen, you can see innovative technology. This is based on one of the companies that we work with, where they were like, yeah, honestly, it's super cool to be working on stuff that most of the public doesn't even know about.
Yeah.
Like that we're working at these high level, almost space age kind of things. That's fantastic. And then anytime that we find some little thing that pops out, like high performers scored 50% lower on base pay. Oh, okay, if that's the case, then it's more the idea of giving someone what they want to do rather than just paying them more. And that really speaks to this particular profile.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily translate across. And so that would be lost in the statistics if we just did it as a company.
Sure.
But for this profile, hey, that's a big deal. So for this profile, this is the kind of brand that we want to communicate.
Now, organization factors. 84% of employees in this segment believe they belong at this company.
Yeah, so going from the job itself to the corporation. So you might be doing something fantastic. I don't know, let's say you're playing professional sports, you really like playing baseball. Yeah. Well, there's a difference between playing for some AAA team in Omaha versus playing for the Yankees. It's there's much more of a feeling around that organization than there is, even though the task itself is roughly the same. You're still playing baseball, but to play for a company that's world recognized and things like that is a big deal.
So it's something they brag about. They're proud to work there. They tell their friends they work there. They enjoy the reputation that it brings, the cachet.
Yeah. And location, for example. I know a lot of people that love to work for corporations that are based out of Manhattan. Yeah. Like, it just feels like they're part of that center of the world where everything's happening. And that's a big deal for them. I know a lot of people, that's the worst thing in the world for them. They don't want that at all.
So here we're looking at rewards factor. So recognition was a big component or feature for this group. So they believe the rewards offered by this company are competitive with offerings from similar companies in the industry. You can see here, can you explain the pie charts here, what we're talking about?
Okay, so what's really interesting is for these people that are attracted and committed, this was an interesting finding, is that what attracted people to the organization in this case were engagement factors, the opportunity for a really meaningful job, for growth and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But what was interesting is as they stayed there, the things that committed them weren't the engagement. Now, it's still important.
Yeah, not as much, it's smaller.
And I think with this particular company, the key here was that this company was so good at the engagement factors that they became sort of natural. They weren't even thinking about it anymore because they just had growth and impact and connection and things like that. But the satisfaction elements, much more of the sabbatical program, the flexible work option, and the gym and things like that, those were things where they were like, oh, I would really want this, and it became more front of mind because their satisfaction elements weren't being satisfied.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and so this is all part of the stuff that comes out of the EVP, where you can really get in. People that are data hungry, this is their dream. They're like, oh my gosh, because these are the things that will predict success for particular groups of employees. And this is so much better than just guessing or figuring it out or surveying a company as a whole, where a lot of these specific details get lost due to just the sheer nature of variability.
Yeah, if you're looking at the entire employee population, you're not going to see the nuance. So future factors, is this what you're talking about in terms of predicting their future employment or their willingness to stay?
Exactly. What are the things that we're saying you need to do in order to keep them happy, to satisfied, and to keep them at the company? Okay. And so this is another part where this kind of analysis really shows dividends.
Okay, so again, we're looking at attrition here, trying to understand who's most committed and least committed out of the group and why. And then we have a difference between how total rewards are perceived between males and females.
Yeah, exactly. So like with females, you see on this one, 70% less likely to value the total rewards as an important thing than males. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so let me flip back over to, let's talk more about the process itself. I'm going to flip back over to our slides. And now it's really, so how do you use this information? How do you leverage this to retain, attract, retain, and engage your workforce?
So the easy answer is this gives you a company direction. If you're looking for a way to attract more people and you say, well, we need to attract engineers, we need to attract wait staff, we need to attract something, you go to that employee value proposition, you see what the profiles are, you say, oh, well, this is what we need to do, and that's how you market it. When you put it up on LinkedIn, when you start headhunting, when you do whatever you're doing, you are able to target people better. And I don't have to tell you how important it is to find the right people up front so that they're already halfway bought in, that you don't have to bring them on board as much. They're already prepared in certain ways. And so that's an obvious one for attraction. The retention and the engagement ones are a little bit harder in the sense that now you have to create this. Once you've got them, now what do you do with them? And this is where you say, okay, well, these are the people that really want this. And sometimes what they want is something that you can't provide. And so you have to back yourself up a little bit and say, okay, well, everyone wants a gym. We can't do that. But you know what we can do is this obviously means wellness is important to them. So maybe we can play around with ideas like create a deal at a local gym, or we can sponsor something, or we can have someone come in at lunch and you can work in the break room. I was with one company that had CrossFit like during their lunch break kind of thing. It was really interesting. And so you can play around and just say, okay, maybe we provide discounts on health insurance based on your own gym membership, and whatever you can come up with. And it's because you're basing it on the principle of what's motivating and retaining them versus just what you think, what your best guess is.
And then engaging or motivating the workforce, you talked a little bit about that, but it's really kind of looking at more of those intangible elements that help people really engage in their work.
Right, and that's the thing is we're creating the intangible and making it tangible. You want growth? Well, we're gonna operationalize that and see what that actually looks like, and we're gonna see how to actually move the needle.
So let's do an example here. It's health insurance is kind of one of the biggest formal, tangible benefits that an organization offers, but we want to look at it through kind of a different lens, the employee lens, to really understand what it means to them. So, what are the underlying values that lead people to seek the benefits offered? That's kind of the question you should ask as you look at each of the benefits that are on the list.
Right. So really easy. The benefit. What's the benefit of health insurance? Well, anyone can answer that. That's an easy answer.
Mm-hmm.
If you get sick, then you're covered. You have peace of mind, right? So what does that say though? If you're looking at it through an employee lens, you can look at it a couple different ways. One is that safety and security. This is a worry I don't have to have. I can unshoulder that burden. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is, oh, my employer is paying this much of my healthcare and it's really good or something like that. And it's because they care about me and my employer cares about my safety, well-being, health, and that of my family. And they do it because they love me. That's one. Another one, as you can see at the bottom, the employer values helping people, just in general. And this is just one aspect of how to help people in the community. And so it's the exact same behavior. We're providing health insurance. But how does an employee see that? They see it as, oh, well, you're forced to. It's law that once you get above this many people, you have to give me health care insurance. But you're doing it grudgingly. Or do you get the feeling, does the employee get the feeling, no, we're happy to do it. We're happy and we love it and we want to make sure you're okay because we care about you.
Yeah, so some of this is kind of communicating that, hey, we have a good healthcare plan. Percentage-wise, we're covering more than other organizations, and so you're really trying to make people understand that, hey, this isn't just something we're offering because we have to. It's really better than what's out there and important to you as an individual.
Exactly. And so if you're looking at employees, one of your profiles is they want to work for someone who cares about them and the community. And then you start going, oh, well, how can we communicate that we do? Well, I can do it through things like we can make an initiative. Oh, we donate to charities, or we do neighborhood service projects, or we just care about job creation or whatever. We try and make our company greener and things like that. Even little things like health insurance can now be rebranded as that. And that's the key, is you need to know what the employees think and feel first before you should start making movements. Otherwise, maybe you'll guess right, and that's fantastic. Yeah. Maybe you won't. It's a huge waste of time and money.
Exactly. So as we finish here, we wanted to share a few examples, brief kind of sort of case studies, I guess, as we looked at different corporate brands in terms of the employee value proposition. So the idea is that not necessarily McDonald's or Google in terms of what they are as the company, but what does it mean if you're looking to work at that organization from the employee standpoint, or if you do work there, how does that brand, what does that brand mean to you? As opposed to a consumer of the products.
And so I was working with a company just recently, and we were talking about exactly this. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, what is your internal brand? And they're like, well, it's probably our mission statement. I was like, what's that? And they recited something. It was along the lines of, we want to leverage our particular unique abilities to facilitate growth. And I don't even remember what it was because I fell asleep while they were telling me. I was like,
sure.
This isn't a brand. It's accurate. These are things that you're doing, but it's not a brand. There's no emotional connection. Right. What am I doing with that? So if you look at some of these corporations like Google, for example, if you were going to go work at Google, why would you want to do that? Everyone's heard of Google, best place in the world to work, right? Year after year. And it's because, oh my gosh, they're so innovative, they're so creative, they have so much fun at the office. And there's a lot of things that go into it. But if you were to say brand, it's we love what we do. And we want to make sure you do as well. And that's an easy brand to connect to. PwC, for example, they don't have enough spots for everyone that comes through. They have a huge foundation base of consultants and stuff like that, but not a lot of growth opportunities in terms of moving up in the company. Yeah. And they've embraced that and said, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We will train you so well that when you inevitably go somewhere else, because there's not a spot for you here and you've outgrown your position, that you will leave with a huge bullet point on your resume, that you will have our best recommendation, you will be better prepared than anyone else. And so the brand there, what's connecting people is, how would you like to work at one of the best companies and that will prepare you for future? Yeah. We're happy to help prepare you for anything, not just self-interested.
So as a college student, you realize when the recruiter comes to your university, you're going to spend maybe 3 to 5 years there, work with a lot of companies around the world or the country, get some good experience, and maybe land a job with one of your clients.
Exactly. Versus when I was living in Manhattan and I had a lot of friends going through law school, when they would go to different corporations, different law firms, it was they knew going in, well, they're going to work me to death, and then maybe at some point I'll make partner. And it was a very defeatist kind of a thing. They didn't have that, oh, they love me and they want to prepare me. It was, they're going to use me up, and hopefully I can I can last long enough to ease off my load.
Right.
And so that's a different sort of brand.
So then Walmart and McDonald's are obviously different in terms of their positions offered, especially the entry-level positions that they have. And their value propositions are different as well. So what would you think of Walmart or McDonald's?
If you look at a lot of things they do, they are very, the way they market themselves when they're recruiting, at the very least, are, hey, we're going to hire you, and we're going to give you that chance that maybe other people wouldn't. And so we're going to make sure that if other people have forgotten about you, we haven't. And that's really what they play for. And they get a lot of people that say, oh, thank you so much for the chance. I have X, Y, or Z problems that have prevented me. Sometimes being, I just don't like to work, What I mean?
Right.
And because of that, because of folly in the youth, they've screwed up. But here, we'll hire you and we'll help prepare you for something more. And that's their brand.
So you kind of build your resume, show some consistency, show that you work for a big company, that kind of thing.
And that's what they use in their recruiting efforts. It's exactly that.
Now, McDonald's, of course, goes after the teenage population, trying to get them with after-school work or summertime work. I think we're familiar with a lot of the advertisements we've seen for even career opportunities at McDonald's as well. But they definitely present a different employee value proposition as they're trying to attract that younger work segment.
Yeah, exactly. Walmart has that veteran program where they say if you've served in the military, then we give you special consideration and whatnot. And that paints them as we care about the country, and we care about people that have helped us, and we're going to help you back, and things like that.
So that concludes our formal presentation today. We have some questions here that we want to address from the audience. One that came in was, as we were talking about focus groups, so how many people do you typically have in a focus group? How many groups do you typically run? Do you have a good set of data? Does it depend kind of on the size of the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Generally, what you want to shoot for is you want to shoot for somewhere between 5 and 10% of your organization as a representative sample. And I know a lot of people, and in fact, even the picture we used in our slides show bigger focus groups, like 10 to 15. I don't like that as much. Yeah. I've found that the best value to me comes between 6 and 10. And that's what I shoot for with my focus groups, with the idea being I will hold more focus groups in order to get to that 10% of the population.
How long do they typically last?
Between an hour and an hour and a half.
And do you segment the population a little? I guess, do you include managers and non-managers together, or do you try to get different pockets, or do you try to segment a little bit with those groups before you actually do the survey?
Yeah, we do, especially if there's a place where you might say, hey, my manager sucks, I don't like him, and he's in the focus group with you. And so we definitely try and be sensitive to things like that. And we work with different, with the HR people to say, hey, are there going to be any conflicts with people not being able to share freely in this group? And so we try and pull people from different ones that don't necessarily interact as much already, for a couple of reasons. One, just because everyone's coming in fresh, they don't have their own inside jokes or complaints already, kind of a thing. Yeah. And so we try and spread it out as much as possible so that everyone's coming in almost anonymous. Now, obviously, with some companies you can't do that because they're smaller, but with the bigger companies, that's an easy thing to do.
Another question, can we get a copy of the slide deck? The answer is yes. I'll be sending out an email with the slides as well as the activity codes for HRCI and SHRM credit. Another question is, what do you do, or how do you communicate maybe the segmentation study or these profiles? Are you just kind of giving that to the executive team? I guess you're not necessarily sharing that with the entire population, right?
No, not necessarily. Not with all the detail. What you do is you communicate, hey, we're looking to really try and understand our employees. We want to understand you. We want to shape your employee experience to be the best one that we can do. We're not interested in just market share or revenue or bottom line third quarter profits or anything like that. We care that you have a good time. And we know that because research has shown the more engaged you are. The companies that have formal EVPs tend to have lower attrition, have higher revenue, things like that. It's a really important thing to do. And so we obviously have a self-interest in doing that, but we want to make sure that you have a positive experience as well. And so we're going to be doing some things, focus group surveys, to help get there. Now, you don't necessarily say, and we're going to profile you and come. It's more, we want to figure out what's important to you and how we can address you specifically. Even if maybe you're a little bit different than other people, we're going to try and find the groups of people and really tailor stuff to each one of those groups.
So another question is in terms of how this dovetails with employee engagement. So as you're doing a yearly survey measuring employee engagement, you have initiatives built around that. Is this kind of a separate initiative that you're running, or how well do they fit together?
They fit together really well, and without, and maybe you want to avoid like survey fatigue,
Yeah.
things like that, and so but at the same time, running them all together is a fantastic idea, because once you get these profiles and you say, well, what's important to them, and then you copy that with some of the engagement stuff, and now you have a really specific idea of what's going to help motivate these people that you already have.
Mm-hmm.
And because an inherent part of engagement is covering those satisfaction factors, covering those attrition factors, this works really well, to the point that if you're going to do both, if you have an idea you're going to do both, we can adjust them so that the engagement survey isn't as long, because the way we do it is typically an engagement survey is also a little bit of an EVP as we do it.
Yeah.
Because most people aren't doing the EVP, and so we throw that in there because it offers so much value. But if you're doing just engagement in conjunction with, you can actually lessen almost both of them because they're working together.
Well, David, thank you very much for the presentation today. I want to thank our audience as well. Look forward to my email, and we hope to have you join us on a future webinar. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.